We had a guy from another squad come over, and he whips out a Ouija board. This thing was made out of cedar and carved. My first thought when I saw it was, wow, that's really nice. My first thought should have been, get the hell away from me. So he looked at me and was like, I can tell you're skeptical. Ask it something that none of us here could possibly know. And it started spelling out the answer. And I immediately picked up the little disc thing and threw it. So we put that thing back on. I'm now convinced. And he starts asking questions. Can you tell us anything? And it says future. I start getting worried. What do you tell us about the future? And it says danger, 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 danger. And it just won't stop. Then it says, what kind of danger? Then it just says death, 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 death. And it's going fast. And it says who? The planchette goes flying off the table and hits me in the chest. I got chills. So then someone grabbed the planchette, and all I could remember is they were asking it how. And the words were Freedom Road Rocket. The very next night, I'm on shift at the mortar pit, and we needed to get an updated weather report. So I make it there, get the weather data. I get out, start running down Freedom Road. I get halfway down Freedom Road, and I look up, and there's this pulsing red light, and this just primal chill at the base of my neck told me, get the fuck down. So I look over at a T-barrier, and I start making my way over to that. And then something said, turn around. And I don't know why. I spun and kicked myself off of that and started running away from the T-barrier. Within a minute, the whole other side of that blows up, blows up, blows up, blows up, blows up, blows up.
From the dawn of the spoken word, storytelling has been the backbone of human culture, warning of looming dangers and evoking our most personal fears. What you're about to hear are the real-life experiences of everyday people, brave enough to share their terrifying tales. Tales where the horror hits close to home. I'm your host, Danny. Welcome to the Hometown Horrors Podcast. Listen, if you dare. Howdy, everyone. Welcome back. We are the Hometown Horrors Podcast. Today we have on Ben Osgood. He's a former Army infantryman and a veteran of the global war on terror, and a budding fantasy novelist. He settled down with his wife to focus on writing and self-recovery, while bringing something that others might enjoy into the world, which I can very much relate to, pursuing that with my own show.
I was Army for 13 years. I spent the first 7 of that in the infantry. I was hurt during my service in Afghanistan, and I muscled through it. I was going through physical therapy. I was going through surgery. I was doing the full gambit to try and stay in. And towards the end of it, the decision was taken out of my hands. And much to my chagrin, I was told, listen, you're either going to take this new job or you're going to kick rocks, buddy. And so I bit the bullet, took a new job, a job that I absolutely, at the beginning, despised. And I only did it because I had the mentality of, I was given a piece of paper that said, you are hereby ordered to perform this service in this capacity. And therefore, I was just a good soldier following orders. So I went from pulling triggers and solving problems at 300 to 400 meters to troubleshooting and solving problems at 3 to 4 feet. And having to learn new skills that were far more difficult than putting bodies in the ground and dealing with explosions, really difficult and terrifying things like customer service and writing emails that did not have an aggressive tone that could get me fired or put in prison or a psych ward. Customer service is far more frightening to me than any time I spent in Afghanistan. If you want real horror stories, go to a hospital and deal with nurses. Not even the medical stuff, just the nurses.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a toss-up. Sometimes you get really great, active, involved nurses, and other times you just get people that are barely awake.
Well, I'd be barely awake, too, if I was pulling 36 hours, sleep for 4 hours in my car, come back in. So I came into the medical field a little under a year before COVID happened.
Well, good luck.
That was my trial by fire. So what I did medically after I got injured was I repaired medical equipment. So I was all over the place. I was in Kentucky and Tennessee at the time, repairing defibrillators, ventilators, all this life-saving equipment during the heat of it, including medical devices for National Guard units that were headed up to New York. So while a lot of other military service personnel had to stay at home, because you're not going to have an infantry guy come in to work when you have the pandemic going around. At the installation I was at alone, I think on a daily basis, from what I remember, we were hitting triple digit numbers daily of new cases.
Good
so
Lord.
It was a really big deal. We were keeping a very, very close track on it. So as far as fatalities, thankfully, that was an overinflated number in my point of view, as far as it came to certain demographics, but it definitely limited people. Now, when it came to equipment, that was a whole other thing. There were not a lot of people that could maintain, repair, distribute, and push these ventilators. So that was a very stressful time. And like I said, as frightening as Afghanistan was, as weird as Afghanistan was, that kept my heart racing. There were a lot of late nights for that first 8-9 months when we were reacting to COVID.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just not knowing where things are going to go. But I'd say that's also another fear that you would have in the field.
Oh, yeah. So it was really strange, I guess, for me when I was getting on the bus to go to the airport to actually fly to Afghanistan. I remember just having this thought of, this is finally it. So I joined in 2010, and in between then and when I left in 2012, it was a solid 2 years of just training. So that's 2 years of this young kid getting ready for what that morning felt like the biggest culminating event of his life. So for me, it felt like going to the homecoming game. It felt like this was finally where I was meant to be. So I felt ready, just warm, kind of like when you're driving home and you start to see those very familiar landmarks and you just kind of feel at ease. That very comforting, familiar feeling. So that's kind of reminiscent of where I was, even though I'd never been there. I'd never seen Afghanistan, never flew over to the Middle East, nothing. And I was confident. I had great leadership. And to this day, I honestly believe that those leaders I had, especially the senior non-commissioned officers, they were the greatest fathers that I could have ever had. They made me who I am. I still reach out to this day, 14 years later, just for advice, just to say hi. And to this day, I would do anything for those men. If they told me to drive across the country right now to change a tire, I would pack my bags. And that's where all of us were.
Yeah.
That's 2 years of getting to know each other. We were very close. And our unit had this real sense of pride. We were within the 1st Infantry Division. Our battalion specifically had always had this kind of joking reputation of one more deployment, and then that's it. Okay, then we're getting rid of this battalion. It's done. And then it was always, well, just one more, just one more. And it had been that way since Korea. So the day I reported to that battalion, they had come back from Iraq. And they were going to what's called case colors, which is shut down the battalion. And I got upset. Then they said, no, wait. We're going to go to Afghanistan. I got excited. And they all just started laughing and said, one more, just one more. And it was kind of the unofficial motto under our breath. But when they got the word for Afghanistan, we just every day for 2 years, train, get ready. We were going to be as ready as we could be. Afghanistan is a completely different animal from Iraq. Anyone who has seen, I wouldn't say the movies, but I would say documentaries. I would especially say Restrepo, infamously. It is the most beautiful and deadly place I would ever see in my life. And I never am going to regret a single moment that I was in that country, for the most part. But when we finally go, there was never a moment right up until we are flying over those deserts that it felt different than any other kind of a training, because to me at that point, within the first 10 minutes, it didn't feel real to me. So after the airplane, we landed at Chinook in Afghanistan. We all get ready, split up, and I had a 60 millimeter mortar strapped onto my rucksack. It's a tube and it launches an explosive out the front end of it. So myself, Corporal Klein, Private Olden, Bailey, and I want to say Corporal Groover at the time. And there was one more, I don't remember. I think it was the one of the medics got assigned into one Black Hawk, and we were going to go and jump to the FOB we were going to go to. And this FOB, Forward Operating Base, is way out on the eastern side of Afghanistan, and it is way down in this valley. We're going out in the Black Hawk, and they have the doors open, you can see, and I'm just seeing mountains, and then the mountains just drop. And as soon as the mountains drop, it's flat. And of course, out in the middle of all this low flat junk is this tiny little blob. And that's, of course, where the Americans are. The lowest part.
Right out in the open.
So you can see, oh yeah, right out in the open, zero cover. I could see everyone in there. And I've never deployed. I'm thinking, why are we down there? Why is it in the bottom? Why isn't it up top? We started getting down, and it didn't register at first. We started landing in. That bird was coming in really quick, and I didn't think about that. All Corporal Klein was saying was like, hey, get ready to get off. We're all right. He's just kind of waving, and he's mouthing. I can't hear him. And I remember looking out the door, and there's guys waving like, hurry up. And even from however 100 meters they are, the looks on their faces was clearly a, oh shit moment. They're freaking out. And that's when I could tell there's a siren going off, and then I hear the word incoming. Well, I feel the helicopter lift up behind me and move backwards. That pushes me forward, and I feel this whoosh coming down from above, and there's a crack and a boom. And I didn't even look to see it. I just start running.
Holy shit.
So when it started landing, the Taliban, whoever, decided to fire a rocket right into the landing zone. So I just bolted. I left my stuff on the landing zone. I just grabbed my rifle and ran. Said, nah, I'm gone. So, of course, I got yelled at for leaving my bag. That makes sense. Okay. So I run out, get my bag, come back. And the one guy that was there, whoever it was, welcome to Afghanistan. I've been in country 3 minutes and I've already gotten shot at. That was just Wednesday for them. They were getting hammered. It became so often. We drew a bingo card of the forward operating base, and every other week or so, we would play rocket bingo, and we would all pick a grid for the week. And if a rocket landed in the grid, you win the pot. After a while, it just got boring because someone would always win within the first couple of days. There were 2 to 3 rockets a day sometimes. It actually got worse when they stopped. That first day of no rockets, you're thinking to yourself, all right, they're just setting up. Then the second day, then the third. By the fourth day, you're so wired up that everything is a threat. The wind sounds like screaming. We were not sleeping at that point.
Yeah, you got to think if they're breaking from routine, then they must have something really bad planned.
That was more terrifying than getting shot at. But I had a rocket land on me in a small bunker that we had built, and it collapsed. The roof fell. I've got a pretty sizable dent in the top of my head. I was wearing a helmet, thank God. Then I've got back injury, a couple of concussions out of it, TBIs, lots of rockets. But I think every single person there got blown up, including cooks there that would make our meals. I will, to this day, defend the cooks because it takes serious chutzpah to go out in a combat zone as a cook and deal with people like me every single day and make hot chow. They were absolutely amazing. But even they got blown up. Everybody took a piece of it. We even had civilians that were there. They would operate a camera system that would do weather and keep watch at night and everything else. They were contractors. They got blown up. Nobody was off limits.
It seems like an inevitability, like you kind of got over the fear of it.
It got boring. When the alarm goes off, you're supposed to throw on all your gear, run into a reinforced building and duck and cover for the next hour, 2 hours, 4 hours until someone decides, okay, we think it's safe, go back to sleep. After about the third month, nobody did it anymore. You just put your helmet on, said a quick prayer, or in many cases, you just said, Bismillah, Inshallah, what happens, God wills it. Almost none of us were Muslims. But a lot of us heard this phrase from our interpreters, Bismillah, Inshallah. We're like, what does that mean? All is God wills it. All right, Inshallah. Rockets would be coming in. We're going, God wills it.
Yeah, this is what's on the menu for today. That expression that there are no atheists on the battlefield, I think everybody kind of attaches themselves to there's a bigger plan at work. I'm just a part of it. You know?
Oh, yes.
It helps you
stay
sane.
We had one dude have a major come to Jesus moment. He grabbed our really Catholic buddy and he was screaming like, dude, how the hell do you say a prayer? How the hell do you pray?
What's God's number? Tell me, please.
What's God's number? Oh, it was great. Like, put in a good word for me. But there's also that kind of camaraderie as well. We had blacks, whites, Asians, Hispanics, Catholics, Jews, Muslims, atheists, Norse pagans, everyone. The only color we had was red, white, and blue. And I think That's the commonality. When you have people that come out of the military, you have this rampant suicide issue, this rampant depression issue. It's a brotherhood, a fraternity, a camaraderie, a relationship that is very hard to find anywhere else. And maybe this is a driving factor as to why so many become law enforcement. Maybe it's a driving factor as to why you find so many joining the more conservative groups, is how I suppose I should phrase it. But what I think we can potentially take out of the military and try to apply on a wider sense is when you have a common goal and you are looking out for one another, not because you can gain from it, but because you are both facing a similar struggle. It doesn't matter who you pray to. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican.
Yeah.
All that matters is that you are here, you are suffering, and you suffer together.
The person beside you has your back. That's your brother, that's your sister.
That's it. And if this gets further and further down the line and we start coming together, who knows? Maybe we turn this entire country, maybe this world around and start actually kumbayaing a little bit more.
Yeah.
But that's a big gist of where I'm at. And I wasn't even always like that, especially when I came back from Afghanistan. I was extremely angry. And even up till recently, I was going to therapy, everything else, finally getting to a place where I'm trying to settle myself, live with everything that happened and accept it. That's the big part.
Yeah, that has to be a very Herculean task. Was there a lot of just like forcing your way through that mentality? Because I think the thing that bonds people most in those situations is having to maintain like a discipline and then also the trauma of it. Because, nobody else would understand the things that have happened.
During the time when it was going on, there was always the thought of not right now, not now. When we lost someone, it hurt. And when you got the news, it enraged you in many different ways and for many different reasons. But overcoming that, there was always the thought of not right now, you have a job to do. And a big part of that was there's still people there that need help right now. You need to go now. And as long as you had that in front of you, you could take the emotion and the pain from the loss and put it in a box to the side, and it would wait. The morning can wait. But as soon as the task was over and you had to come back mentally and you see the box, for me, it was very hard to open it. So every time I came back mentally, I would, instead of acknowledging it, I would go and look for the next thing that needed to be taken care of. So for years, I always told myself, not right now. And eventually, after many instances of not right now and many more funerals, many more calls, many more folded flags, more boxes that I had to put to the side and tell myself, don't look inside. It got to the point when I got a phone call that a very close family member had died. I had no emotion. My only response was, I understand. And when I went to their grave, I stood over them and I read the name, I nodded, and I walked away. 2 weeks later, I had a very close friend die in a training accident. He had actually texted me before, like months ago, saying, hey dude, got promoted, yada yada, that's awesome. But I blew it off because I was busy. 2 weeks after I stood at the grave of my uncle, a really close friend who I had met when they were a private and I was a specialist. After he had made staff sergeant, he told his guys he was going to ride with the lesser experienced pilot on a Black Hawk at night. So his guys would go with the more experienced pilot. The pilot made a error. It was a complete accident. It was no one's fault, and they died. And I was completely destroyed for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
So at that point, I knew I had problems because when I got the news, I was at work at my unit, and I just couldn't stop shaking and crying. At that point, I'd been sober for 5 or 6 years, and I was so distraught that when I drove home later that day, I found myself parked in front of a liquor store that I didn't even know existed. And I have no idea how long I'd been sitting there. And that's one of the reasons I knew I needed help. But yeah, that was a bad one.
Yeah, because you got to think you've been putting things in that box for years, and just it took one thing to crack it right open.
Oh yeah. But the good news is everything moves forward, everything improves, everything works out for the best, and it is better now. His family's taken care of, everything's doing all right.
I apologize. It's kind of the nature of the show that we tread over delicate material.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
understandable. I'm an open book.
The craziest thing is that there were supernatural occurrences at the base. Was that mostly in Afghanistan?
Oh, yeah. The first spooky experience I had military-wise actually happened when I got to Fort Riley, Kansas. We were in processing, and we had a building there that all the new recruits had to go into. And any military building that you have folks living in, you always have people that are, keeping watch of the building, making sure no one is entering the building unauthorized. And in some cases, if a unit gets in trouble, you may have someone keeping people in for a curfew. It's extremely rare, but I've seen it once or twice. And that's when someone really messed up. But you always have someone that's up there and awake. So when I was in the replacement building and we're all waiting to get assigned to a unit, all you did was paperwork in processing and sit in this building, play video games, watch TV, whatever. One evening on a weekend or something like that, I was sitting there at the table, overnight shift, with an NCO that was also waiting to go to his unit and another soldier. So there were three of us sitting at this desk that goes to the front entryway. And we were talking about one of the quote unquote weird things that was going on in the building. And according to the NCO, who lived on the fourth floor of this barracks, he was hearing almost every Friday or every other Friday evening, he would hear somewhere in the middle of the eastern wing a door slam and then footsteps run towards the end of the building where a stairwell was. And that door would slam and then it would be dead quiet. And he said, it's just the weirdest thing. I don't know if it's a guy that sneaks out every Friday or if he's always late, whatever it is, but it's ticking me off. So we're talking about this and kind of laughing. And some random person around the corner said, oh, I heard it's a ghost. So of course we're talking now about the ghost thing. Who should walk in but two extremely drunk brand new soldiers, and they overheard what we were talking about. Now, of course, alcohol being the perpetrator and the inspiration for every genius idea in the history of the United States, including, the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, the United States Marine Corps, all inspired in a bar. These two decide, oh, well, we've drank enough that we're going to go and sit up on the third floor with our camera and drink, and we're going to wait for the ghost. So they get permission to turn off all the hallway lights, and from around 10 p.m. until 3, we're sitting on the first floor, and the stairwell doors remain open so you can hear what's going on in the building. During those 5 hours, every few minutes, you would hear these two drunk guys yelling, hey, turn the damn light off. We're trying to catch a ghost. And that's how we knew they were still there drinking. When I went over to the stairwell, the pair of guys drinking had quickly turned into around a half dozen with lawn chairs, flashlights. Someone brought a tripod out and put do you remember the Xbox Connect cameras?
I do. They shoot that grid out for motion.
Yeah. So he stripped the black part that goes on the front. So he had this extremely dangerous green laser shooting out in this hallway. Like, if you look into that laser, from my understanding, it'll cook your corneas. So he has this thing shooting down into a habitated hallway where people are living. And they're constantly yelling at people to turn the lights off because they're trying to catch ghosts. In addition to the beer, there's like vodka, whiskey, fireball. It's a damn ghost party.
Just going for it.
They're having full on. I left. Now, I want to say it's around 3 or 4. We just hear, what the fuck? And pure chaos. Two of the guys fall back down a little bit around the stairs and you hear clattering, and one dude ran down with his cell phone camera and showed us the picture. You could barely see this, but the green laser thing kind of fogged out, in front of one of the doors. So apparently, one of 4 or 5 of these drunk guys believed to have seen a ghost so badly that they fell back down the stairs. At first, thought nothing of this, thought it was funny. I get to my unit, and I'm telling this story to my team leader. He looks at me, looks over at one of his friends, and looks me dead in the face and says, that used to be this other unit's building. 2 years ago, a guy with his girlfriend broke up with him and then found out that the reason she broke up with him was because she was pregnant with his best friend's baby.
Oh, Jesus.
So he wrote a suicide note, put it in the barracks, and then put on his full dress uniform and on a Friday at 4 a.m. allegedly dove out the window and cracked his skull open on the concrete. The reason they know that this person, according to this team leader I had, died at 4 a.m. was because there had been a disturbance call and 2 MPs were smoking beneath the window.
So did he literally land right next to them?
Yeah.
Oh my
smashed his head
God.
open right in front of the MPs. So then 2 years later, you have this story going on in the barracks about the footsteps on the 3rd floor. And now these 4 or 5 extremely drunk impromptu ghost hunters with an Xbox Connect camera freaking out because they see a haze coming out of a door and hear footsteps in a slamming door.
So do you think that's what it is the reenactment of that scene, the leaving, going to the window and jumping?
So at the time, I thought it was a joke. After Afghanistan, if they saw what they saw, then I would have to think that it was just so traumatic for this guy that it's an event that's permeated again and again and again and again. Because if your relationship was such an integral part of your life, and then you find out not only is she breaking up with you, she is pregnant with your best friend's child. And then what was the mental state and why the detail of him putting on his dress uniform before killing himself? That's a movie thing. So if that's what happened, there was probably something else going on. And after 13 years in the military, I would think that there was definitely some other things leading up to this other than the relationship.
Yeah.
Because putting on the uniform and then killing themselves, to me, psychologically, they were also looking at potentially UCMJ and losing the entirety of their military service. So that was their effort to go out with that last vestige of remaining in the military. They're trying to hold on to it, just like they're trying to hold on to the relationship. But now they're stuck in that last and final desperate act.
Yeah. I mean, he must have felt like he literally lost everything in his life except for his time in the service. And I think putting on that uniform was like a pay of respect. Like, thank you for this good thing. This is how I'm going to end it.
Yep. I know it sounds selfish. And as someone who's been in that state, I agree with those who believe that suicide is selfish. I agree. I've been on the other side of it. But at the same time, when you're in that mental state where you honestly believe it is the only way out, it's not a cry for help anymore. You feel so truly lost that you're swimming in the dark. You're happy to have that door. It looks so welcoming. And it's very sad when it happens to someone like that. But after Afghanistan, my whole thought about it being fake or them lying, that completely changed. Because yes, did I enjoy watching Ghost Adventures and Paranormal Activity or other types of shows? Of course, but I always watched it with the air of, well, this could be a pipe creek. This can be a motion in the wind, or my goodness, you're calling this evidence. Mind you, when I would watch these documentaries and I would see something that could be legitimate evidence, I would acknowledge it. I always kept an open mind. And my basis in that is just science. We have energy. Energy doesn't end. Once you are dead, mind you, I am separating spirit, life, from energy. Your spirit, your essence, whatever, must be separated from the electrical, bioelectrical signals that your body is producing as it moves around. So knocking recreated events, I now believe is completely possible. Will I ever go into a haunted house and hunt for ghosts? Goodness, no. You could not pay me enough money to go and do this. I will not go in a haunted house at a carnival after Afghanistan. I can't even read Stephen King books after Afghanistan.
And I got to tell you, from a lot of the stories I've heard just doing the show, I believe that if you go looking for something, you can accidentally find something and it'll be way more than you bargained for. There are definitely things out there you don't want to mess with.
Well, forget energy. You'll find actual living people.
That too is true, yeah.
But even still, the big event that kind of changed my mind when I got to Afghanistan. This is around the time everyone is getting bored with the rockets. I started getting assigned to the QRF. Basically, something happens, the QRF goes out, reacts, takes care of what needs to be done. So you're on call to go fight. So when I went to that, I was also the night gunner for the mortars. At night, I was down in the mortar pit, which was tucked away in this one little corner of the base, right next to the Afghan side of the compound. If you were in the mortar pit and you looked out towards the rest of the American side, you had a little walled out section that had a bunch of pretty decent porta-johns, toilet paper and everything. The arts gallery is the other name we had for it because the really good art was in that one. And of course, the cleaning folks would come every 2 weeks or so and they would paint it over. And then within the next couple of weeks, you get more art. It's like our version of the comic book. Whoever was over there was really good. So I went over there looking for new art and, use the facilities. And someone had written, "Have you seen the Red Man?" My heart sank because the number of hash marks that were below it, I stopped counting after 30.
Oh my God.
That's kind of when I went, all right, I'm not just tired. I had been playing it off as it's Afghanistan, it's a sandstorm playing tricks on me. This can't be what I'm seeing 2 or 3 times a night. You could sit on the sandbags near where my ammo was for the mortar pit and look out of my mortar pit toward where a gate used to be. It was now walled off and had a guard tower there. The guard tower faced out and had a wall, so you could not see in. So the folks that were up there couldn't see what I saw. If I was looking over in that section at the right time, there was around a 5'8", 5'9" ovalish red haze that would come in from the left and then go toward the wall, stop, turn left, and go straight past where the porta-johns were, and then leave my field of view. And the only way I can describe it is someone walking a patrol, because it was dang near the same path. Now, it was not exactly the same on a track. There was definitely a variation to it.
So it wasn't a set routine every time.
Oh, no. But the other thing that does not have a set routine on a patrol are service members. You never walk the same route, ever. You go to the same points or to the same vicinity, but if you go to a place, you never return to where you came from on the same route.
Yeah, because you're establishing routine for other people to observe.
Exactly. And it's how you get complacent. You do have points of coverage, but the way that thing was moving, it varied, but it always came to that area. Now, there were at least 3 other places that thing would be seen. So a total of 4 spots in the side of the fob we were at. So I don't know. Was this thing sentient? And did it still think it was assigned here? No idea. Would it be nice to think like, hey, my contract is indefinite? That'd be great. It would also kind of suck because if they worked me to death, I'd like some back pay. I don't know how they're going to pay me, but that was absolutely wild. Moving forward, mention chasing things or seeking them out. We had a guy from another squad in our company come over. Good old boy from Louisiana, real sweet dude. He was mentioning the ghosts where he was. We mentioned some of the stuff we had seen. He got excited and he whips out a Ouija board. And I'm not talking one of those Barnes and Noble cardboard things that says like Madame Laveau on it. This thing was made out of cedar and carved.
Now that's the beginning of a horror movie.
Yeah. My first thought when I saw it was, wow, that's really nice. My first thought should have been, get the hell away from me. But this is my buddy. I'm looking at this thing going, that's cool. Mind you, also, all of you listening to me right now and screaming at me, because I know you are, yes, I have seen the same horror movies you have. But this was not a horror movie. This was my life. I was tired. I was in Afghanistan. I was bored. And also I wasn't thinking straight because I was pretty much existing on caffeine, nicotine, and hatred for I think about 5 months at this point. So when he pulled this thing out, the only person who had a healthy reaction to this thing was our buddy Olden Hughes. He was from somewhere in Africa, and his accent would come out when he was pissed. It was the greatest thing. And that was one of the few times he let his accent slip out. He said, Buddha, you better get that thing away from me. And he just left. He would not be in the same room with us. So when this guy puts the Ouija board in, myself, I believe Bailey was in there. Then he had gotten promoted. Corporal Klein was on the other side. Sergeant Groover, he had gotten promoted. He came in and saw it. And he looked at us and he just said we were fruity for playing with it, that he hoped we all got possessed and started doing extracurricular activities with each other's more intimate parts. That was his feeling on the matter. We start playing with I say playing with it in the same way you play with, I guess, lighter fluid and a torch. So he kicks this thing off. And I was skeptical too. So I was watching his hands the whole time. You know how if you're watching card sharks, you're looking for the little muscles in their hands to see if they're doing anything?
Yeah.
Completely relaxed. As far as I could tell, his hands weren't doing anything. And he looked at me and was like, I can tell you're skeptical, so go ahead and ask it something that none of us here could possibly know. So I did. And very stupidly, I asked it a question that I should have never, ever, ever asked, because that information should have never come to light in front of any of them. And it started spelling out the answer. And I immediately picked up the little disc thing and threw it. All right, you've convinced me. He said, no, you broke the thing. You're not going to find out the answer to that. You already got the first few letters. You're not finding out. So we put that thing back on. I'm now convinced. And he starts asking questions. Is there anyone here? It says yes. Can you give us a name? And it just does this weird wobble. Can you tell us anything? And it says future. I start getting worried. What do you tell us about the future? And it says danger, 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 danger. And it just won't stop. Then it says, what kind of danger? Then it just says death, 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 death. And it's going fast. And it says who? The planchette goes flying off the table and hits me in the chest.
Jesus.
I got chills. And that's why he picks it up. Olin came back in. He is taken from the chaplain's assistant a little thing of holy water, and he is splashing me with it and praying fervently.
Yeah, I would have messed myself, man.
And yeah, I was freaking out a little. So then I can't remember who asked it, but someone grabbed the planchette, and all I could remember is they were asking it how, and the words were Freedom Road Rocket. The very next night, I kid you not, I'm on shift at the mortar pit, and we needed to get an updated weather report for the firing line. Go out of the mortar pit, turn left, go straight down, and it's about 40 meters down there. Then I need to make a right turn, and it's about 200 meters down this big straight line until I get to the artillery building. So I make it there, get the weather data, write it down. We take, while I'm in there, a rocket. No big deal. They sound the all clear after a while. I get out, start running down Freedom Road. I get halfway down Freedom Road, and I look up, and there's this pulsing red light, and this just primal chill at the base of my neck told me, get the fuck down. So I look over at a T-barrier. It's a big 20-foot tall concrete T-shaped thing that they stick on the ground. And I start making my way over to that. And then something said, turn around. And I don't know why. I spun and kicked myself off of that and started running away from the T-barrier. Within a minute, the whole other side of that blows up. No idea how any of that happened. But sure enough, I get up, ears ringing, not hurt, not a scratch. Look up, and there's this stupid little wood sign with a flag carved onto it. Says, welcome to Freedom Road. I go running down to the mortar pit, give up the firing data, and I'm just shaking my head going, holy crap. And I went and talked to the guy that brought that Ouija board out, and I said, dude, I never want that thing anywhere near me again.
Yeah, what do you make of that?
No way.
Was that like your final destination moment where like you see the thing that would be your death and then you just inexplicably turn from it?
I was just acting in the moment. It was like a gut feeling, almost like someone was screaming at me saying, hey, idiot, you're not doing what you're meant to be doing. Because I've had a lot of moments like that in my life, just weird feelings that this isn't where I'm meant to be. Like towards the end of my military career, I think the last 2 years of my military career, I had that nagging feeling of this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. And even still, the first year that I got out of the military, I was working at a civilian hospital, had that feeling of, I don't know if this is what I'm supposed to be doing. mind you, both of those times, I was really good at what I was doing. For the last 3 years I was in the military, and for the year that I was working in a civilian hospital, I was really good at it. I was making decent money at the civilian hospital. I was making a decent career in the military, but I had that feeling of this isn't what you need to be doing. And it was just such a strong feeling that it forced me to make the influential decision to go, all right, go and do it. And I got to credit that with that gut instinct of, you know what, throw it to the wind, follow your gut. That's led me to my career now.
So do you think that's a situation of like all of your time, all of your training has led to you developing that gut instinct? Or do you think having that gut instinct is what helped you survive a lot of those situations?
I think it's training. I really do. The biggest benefit, I think, out of any sort of training in general, because I've heard stories very similar, not just from the Army, but many different armed services, not just in the United States, but across the world. I've heard stories about firefighters during, say, 9/11, where I forget the name. There was a firefighter who was making his way up the second tower, and they had marked the doors in the stairwell with X's to say the floors had been cleared. He passed one door, then two doors, and three doors, and each of those doors had an X on it. And when he passed a second door, he just stopped and he walked back down the stairwell, like a full flight of stairs, to one of the doors with an X on it, kicked in the door, and there were like 6 people in there about to die from smoke inhalation. And he saved 6 people just because something in his gut told him, hey. And that's a skill that that man had. Thanks to years of training, years of experience, he's able to perform at that high level. You have instances dating to World War I, World War II, where these service members and many of these different services are able to accomplish these extraordinary things just because they act without thinking. There was a pilot that survived an encounter with the Red Baron, and he credited the only reason that he survived 3 encounters with the Red Baron was the voice of Lady Luck in his ear every time. It was a British pilot, forgot the name. But there's many different accounts, and they're all over. So I can't credit, say, any innate ability that I may have, but I will credit the military for being able to refine or develop or at least teach the importance of instinct and resilience, and to kind of figure out and act quicker and be decisive in that decision-making process and not freeze up.
Yeah, and I think just the repetition, running drills, it trains the subconscious mind too. So you might not be fully aware that you're picking up on certain things and processing stuff, but like you said, walking past that door and just turning around, you realize something might have been missed.
Oh, I wish I remembered his name. I would love to accredit that man. But even still, it's just pure instinct and just happy circumstance and just luck. I'll take luck over skill any day for myself. Of course, I'd love to refine skill.
Yeah. But here's the question. Are you happy that the Ouija board kind of let you in on that? Or do you think just interacting with it put you close to something that you never want to be close to again?
For the sake of not ticking off anything that I don't want against me, thanks for the heads up. You're cool, we're cool. But I for one, I'll never pursue anything or try to make deals or try to engage directly, but I acknowledge. So there are very prevalent stories of something like that in Afghanistan. Now, in the U.S., we have the stories of the shadow figure and demons, and what a lot of your listeners may not know about, but you're very familiar with the late, great Robin Williams' rendition of the genie from Aladdin.
Of course.
Well, the jinn, D-G-I-N-N, definitely are not the happy-go-lucky spirits that Disney showcases in this cartoon. I was brought up on that education by my interpreter when we started talking about the things that were happening at night. And we were brought further into this discussion when we were going to make second contact with a extremely remote village that was so far up in the mountains that we were pretty sure that some of us were the first Americans or soldiers that some of the children had ever seen, or that some of the older folks had seen since the Russians when they were mujahideen and fighting the Soviets. That's how far out in the boonies they were. It took us 2 days to get there on foot. No vehicles could get out there, and there was no place to land a helicopter decently. So we walked. The first thing that happened the morning of, before we walk into the village, our interpreter, Asif, came up. One of the guys was a scout, and he had the most beautiful, piercing onyx blue eyes. I'm talking supermodel blue. This man, gorgeous. Asif went to him and just verbatim said, "Do not take off your sunglasses or they will kill you." Reason being, it is very widely believed, especially in the more tribal areas, that a sign that a jinn has taken human form, or that this being is a servant of the jinn, is very vibrant blue eyes. So there was a legitimate fear on our side that if this guy had his eyes seen by anyone in that village, they would kill him.
On sight.
Yeah. We looked at Ozzy and said, "Are you kidding me?" And he looked more serious than I'd ever seen him. He said, "No." And this is a guy, he would laugh and joke and always smiling. He was dead serious, cancer serious. He said, "No, I am not kidding." Ozzy lived his entire life in a war zone under many, many different warlords, but he always had a smile on his face, always could cut a joke. Very happy guy, very smart. We loved the man. We trusted him with everything. He was one of the best interpreters we ever met. That man never looked scared, never looked serious, except for a few moments, and that was, I think, one of three. He genuinely was afraid for that man's life. And when we went into the village, it kind of pulled Asif to the side when we were in quiet areas, and he said, "We'll talk about it in a little bit, but if anyone comes around, they're going to get really angry about this." And he started pointing at areas that these people believed the jinn were living out there. And there's just these massive cave networks. If goats wander off near it, they consider it dead. They will not go get it. These are animals that they subsist on. They're essential. It's the equivalent of 2 years car payment, walking out into the dark, never to be seen again. They won't go get it. If a child went missing, won't look for it if it went that way. Can't risk it. It's a very real fear. And you're out there in the middle of the night, the sounds that you sometimes hear, if you're not familiar with the wildlife, you definitely get the feeling that there is another world that you cannot really put your finger on. And aside from that, there were places in Afghanistan, you can smell the blood. You smell iron on the wind.
That is so unsettling. But what is it that they thought were in the cave? Just the jinn themselves? If memory serves, it's more of a translation to like evil spirit than what our modern idea of genie is.
Yeah, 100%.
Or demonic spirit.
Demonic, an extremely demonic spirit. So we would consider maybe like a demon, a shadow figure, trickster. It could inhabit you, could force people to do things. It could coerce you, it could tempt you to the point of absolutely defy the will of God, which I find far more frightening. Because if you look at the Judeo-Christian example in the theology, you can always fall back on the faith and drive evil. With the jinn, that is impossible. He is there and acknowledged, but they will not be subservient and they will defy him. And it is his will. And I find that far more frightening, quite honestly.
Yeah.
There's, of course, I don't have any direct knowledge of this. This is more something that was happening toward the river valleys and the northern sectors. I was hearing rumors for a while around 2013 into 2014, people finding individuals that were 12 to 13, in some cases 18 feet tall, alive, just massively tall people, and not just one individual, but dozens of individuals in communities that were giant. Now, there have been documented cases in, say, North Africa, many parts of Asia, of gigantomorphism in humans and in mammalian animals. So I'm wondering if there's maybe a potential that there's a genetic strain in the Middle East, predominantly in parts of Afghanistan, India, places in that region, maybe even Pakistan, of human individuals that may be 14, 15 foot tall, that were being seen and interacted with. And if it was being kept secret, then I would imagine the reason being, when it was reported, at least the Americans and Anthropological Society said, we cannot have these people exploited. So we're going to keep a lid on this. But of course, the rumors come out. You can even go online right now. A majority of it now is going to be YouTube videos of biblical giants in Afghanistan, and special forces rangers had a firefight with a 20-foot giant. But rumors like that I never directly heard during that time. But we had spottings of 14 to 20-foot tall giants. And the reason I believe that, yes, it's very possible that there were people that could have been that tall and they have a genetic mutation or anomaly such as gigantism, because there was a whole family in one area I patrolled that their average height was around 3 foot tall as an adult. That was a whole family, all the way up to the great-grandfathers. And we thought they were the most amazing people. The first time we saw them, I thought they were low crawling up on us. So I had actually charged my weapon, and the guy next to me had charged his weapon, because all we could see were the heads coming up over the berm. And then they come around the side, and you just see these 3 foot tall people come around the berm with beards and their bags, and some of them were pushing carts. And it's horrible to say this out loud, but in my head, I could hear the Off to Work song from No Life Except Yours.
Yeah.
In my head, I'm going to put on record, I did not sing the song. Corporal Klein sang the song. But when we met them, they were some of the nicest, coolest individuals ever. They were extremely friendly. They introduced us. Their whole family was around 3 foot tall. They did have some folks that were around 5 foot, but they were honestly shocked how often it was that foreigners thought they were celebrities. Foreigners always wanted to take pictures with them and not of them. So they were welcoming about that.
It's interesting to think whether or not that's just a freak genetic thing, or maybe there was more genetic variety, say even like 1,000 years ago, and then maybe through breeding or just passage of time, maybe you just don't get people that are 10 to 12 feet tall anymore. A side note, I was at a Rob Zombie show the other day, and there was a 8-foot dude as part of the stage crew. So he would come out every now and again and be in like a, devil costume or ghost costume. 8 foot tall is startlingly large, but 10 to 12 is nuts.
Oh, yeah. When you hear statistics like so-and-so playing for the Lakers is 6'5", you think, wow, that's really tall for a basketball player. I myself am 5'10", and the first time I stood next to someone who was 6'5", I just cowered. And I'm a bulky dude. At 5'10", I've got wide shoulders, and I looked up at this lanky beanpole of a 6'5" man, and I honestly had the thought of, I don't think I can take this guy.
Yeah, when someone's like 3 or 4 heads taller than you, you just feel like a child. You're like, oh man, they literally cast a shadow over me.
Yeah, but it's always the tall ones that are the nicest. I think it's all the concussions they get from hitting door frames. It turns them into nice people.
But if you want to go to the conspiracy corner, there is a lot of talk of there being actual giants and then living underground. The conspiracy goes that there's like a hollow earth, like any stone that's submerged in water becomes porous. Water just works its way through it. So the idea is that under the earth's crust, there could actually be entire societies or entire ecosystems down there. And that may be where a lot of these things that history mentions, like in the Bible, for instance, David and Goliath. Goliath might not have just been like a big dude like Shaquille O'Neal. He might have actually been a giant.
So it's interesting on two things. So you mentioned inner earth. What was it? A year ago, a sinkhole opened up under a farmer's field in Hunan province in China, revealing a completely enclosed underground ecosystem, including grass, trees, rivers, a lake, a variety of insects, and small mammals. And this was 2023, I want to say, or 22, late 22. So this was a completely enclosed habitat that had no access to direct sunlight, but it had trees.
Did it have like a facsimile of a sky?
It had, I believe what the zoologists and the biologists were talking about was some sort of a bioluminescent fungi, which was able to replicate the necessary properties for photosynthesis.
Wow, life finds a way.
100%. Jurassic Park is never going to disappoint. So if that is possible, well, number one, it's a massive ecosystem that was in one of the most populated countries in the world that has been around since whatever 1000 BC, and it was not discovered in the historical record until the 2020s. Okay, we'll give them that. Two, it was able to sustain life of that magnitude without the normal measures of life that we know it, direct sunlight and the normal conventional means of growth. All right, well, that's 2. Now we're kind of getting out of the realm of conventional science. 3, it has species that we haven't seen before and are nearly undocumented, including mostly plant life that we have never seen before. We're discovering more plant life than anything, if memory serves. So that's now 3 strikes against the improbability of something akin to, like you're describing in an Earth theory. As long as we can find any sort of an evidence to expand on the probability of a possibility, I'm all for looking into it. When you mentioned David and Goliath, I'm in between what I would call the scriptorial theologian historians and the scientific historians. So with the scriptorial theologians, if it is not written in a text, no matter the faith, it cannot be true. All respect to faiths, I can appreciate that. For the science-based ones, they say, if science cannot prove it right here, right now, it never happened, it never will happen, and it does not happen. Well, there is some truth in that. However, science always changes. The Earth was flat for thousands of years until 1, 2, 3, 20 different scientists over the course of many different discoveries repeatedly proved the Earth was round. And they were all called idiots and conspiracy theorists until finally people looked around and said, oh, you know what? It is round.
And unfortunately, that is something that still happens in modern academia. It takes a long time for huge new ideas to be accepted.
For the record, Pluto is a planet. So take that, Neil deGrasse Tyson. I might not have a degree, but I do have a sense of humor. So when you're looking at the David and Goliath in particular, just to be extremely blunt on it, David is described as being in many of the artistic impressions that are taken out of the earlier scriptures, including the old Hebrew and Judeo-tribal historic records. He's predominantly being described as a young man, maybe a little under half the size of Goliath, which is going to be an exaggeration artistically. So let's put him as a young man, probably 20s. That's going to be at the very late age of the age group, in his 20s. Goliath is a seasoned warrior. By seasoned, that only really puts him in his 30s. He's not going to be this grizzled old man. He might be in his 40s, but on the safe end, he may be 35, 36.
Or maybe even younger. Like, I'm not an expert, but I think that lifespans might be a lot shorter back then.
Oh, immensely. You have guys going off to war at 13, 14 years old. They're fighting at that point. But this also brings up another point. If we're going to look at skeletal records in this period, the average height, you're looking at a 5 foot tall David, maybe. Goliath could have easily just been 6 foot. Still a giant.
Yeah,
He's
to
easily
him.
a foot taller than David. To him, Goliath is massive. Now, Shaq O'Neal is 6'9", 6'10". He's a big dude. Put a 5 foot tall, 180 pound shepherd boy against Shaquille O'Neal. That would be scary. That, I believe, is potentially the size difference we're looking at in reality. So when you're looking at a lot of the Hebrew texts, when they're talking about these differentiating measurements, and then you have modern historians try to say Goliath is estimated to be 15 to 18 feet tall. Sure.
It's probably just an artistic flourish, because at the end of the day, the Bible, whether based on true stories or not, they're parables for people how to live their lives.
And I appreciate that it is. Because if, putting myself in that position, if I'm going to write a religious text and I make it boring, who the heck is going to join my religion?
Yeah.
If I wrote the Bible like a textbook, it would be the Torah. Like, as one who's had to read it, I'm sorry. I mean, unless you sing it. If you sing it, it sounds really beautiful. If you sing the Torah in the original Hebrew, it's very beautiful. But some days, especially when you have to read it, oh, Lord, help me. You have to put in these, like you said, embellishments. You have to put this flavor into it. You have to make it interesting. You have to bring people in. But the trick is also, as long as the message comes through, when you read not just the Bible, but you read accompanying texts and manuscripts. I'm Jewish. But when I read a lot of, say, Paul's letters, Paul was a Jew. So I read him as a fellow Jew. And what I see is this man who suffers and is so thankful to be in that position and praises the opportunity to suffer. And that is such a moment when you ask, give me patience. You immediately have that woman in front of you at Starbucks that is taking far too long with their order. Are you going to be given the patience, or will you be given the opportunity to be patient? Will you be given strength, or will you be given the opportunity to be strong? And with my own health, I try to move one step forward every day. And for a very long time, it was hard to find a way to do that and kind of center myself and figure out how am I going to express myself? How am I going to understand these emotions? How am I going to deal with what has happened and confront the fear, the loss, the pain? And when I found, or I should say rediscovered, creative writing, that has been absolutely instrumental, along with, of course, the support of my wife. She's been with me for the last, 8-9 years. We both forget how long we've been married. It's great. Then her and the writing and just keeping projects has been absolutely instrumental for just keeping me ground level. And what really started is just creative writing to put something pen to paper, have fun, and put it up on this Discord chat group where I play Dungeons and Dragons with my friends. Eventually just turned into a book and wound up getting printed. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was looking into that. Is it Hero of Orias?
Hero of Oria. So it is it is now quickly turning into 8 books.
Is it a linear narrative, or is it just different stories from the world?
There will be 3 to 4 books, each with a linear story. So you'll get to have different little arcs, and each trilogy will intersect with another trilogy. So you'll get to have this interwebbed story of the entirety of this continent. I have 5 or 6 notebooks here. It's full of stories that I have this driving urge to get out. And once I've told all these stories with this world, I'll feel better.
Yeah. I feel a very similar way about my podcast. The way I think of it is a red hot coal that's been wrapped in tissue paper. It's like burning directly through that paper. This is something that's going to exist, and I'm just the tool for it to exist.
That is 100% it. I know that's, thank you. Thank you for putting words to it. That is 100% it. That's all anyone can ask for, is you find something that gives you that little warm, fuzzy feeling inside. That's all you can ask for. So the only other one that is ghostly, when I was in Fort Wainwright, Alaska, we had a motor pool, which is where we were keeping all our military vehicles, and really close to the barracks where we were staying at, within, say, a block, 2 blocks away. So you could walk there, which makes sense for a cav unit. We were basically living in those vehicles a third of the time. So during the winter, it would get at the very, very coldest. We had a couple days where it was 50 degrees below zero Fahrenheit. And you would have to go out at 2, 3 in the morning and start all the vehicles and sit in them so that the vehicles would not freeze and die.
Oof.
So you would sit in there with all the clothes that you could try and stay warm in. It was warmer outside of the vehicle. So if you're sitting in that truck, you might freeze to death. So you get out of the vehicle and walk around and stomp your feet. Otherwise, you're going to freeze to death in a steel box. And it's 2 in the morning, just clear skies. You could see forever, especially if someone turns headlights on, you could see for miles. There were times when people would talk about seeing the ghost of a little girl in a dress out near the fences. So some people would say she had gold hair. Some people would say, oh, she has little black hair, like a little native girl near the fence towards the woods. And it was like she would come up to the fence and just stand there watching. And if someone came up or started to make their way, she would turn, dart, and take off into the woods. According to the people that were seeing this girl, you could not survive in a dress like that in 50 below zero weather. The area of the base we're at is secured to the point that no one could actually get there. That actually reminds me, Fort Campbell, Kentucky. That was one of the first duty stations I had after I reclassed. I have a military police buddy. We're drinking one night, and he tells me this one. He was late night patrol, gets a radio call, and we have a cordoned area that's fenced off that when people deploy, people would have their vehicles dropped off near what used to be an old garage. You used to be able to go and repair your vehicles yourself. Well, the building is now basically abandoned. No one uses it anymore. It's boarded up, locked in, padlocked, the whole works. It's got big condemned stickers all over it. No one gets in, no one gets out type of deal. But the fenced area is basically rocked out gravel. It's triple strand barbed wire all the way around this perimeter. Then you have on the side that goes off post, one gate, then the fence, and then you have train tracks, then another fence, and then two more fences, and then you have actual civilian land. That's on the far side. Then you have inside the compound building more fences. It is insanely secure. The reason it's that secure is they don't want people breaking in to steal people's cars while they're deployed. So it's a ton of security. They have a road that goes around it where they'll have security vehicles. The MPs will drive past it. They'll take their spotlight and flash in there to make sure that no one's going in there to try and steal things off the cars like tires, mirrors, radios, what have you. Because sad to say, there are thieves in the military and they'll steal things to make their cars better. It happens. So gets a radio call from an MP who is at the car yard for backup. The dude sounds, my buddy's words are, quote, freaking the F out. He goes, lights and sirens, booking it down Fort Campbell, and he's trying now to make it all the way to the other side of the post. Once he pulls up, the gate is closed and locked. You cannot squeeze through. I think this gate was more secure than the main gate to get on post. The squad car is parked 3 to 4 feet off of the gate. The first officer is behind the driver's side door with his gun drawn, pointed at the gate, looking at the building, and he is pale white. My buddy immediately pulls his car up, throws his spotlight onto the building, and he grabs the assault rifle off of the gun rack that's set in between the driver's seat and the passenger seat. He hops out and he calls over to the first officer, what's going on? He says, I got at least one individual in the building, refusing to comply, and possibly one more behind the red car. Most of the vehicles in this section have been left in this yard since the beginning of the War on Terror, or even further back. These are cars of people who died, and they have never been claimed. So they were waiting for the key from Sergeant of the Watch. They have keys for everything. They have a key to the commanding general's office, all the way from him to the supply closet in some guy's barracks room. They have every key. So Sergeant of the Watch eventually shows up, unlocks the gate, and now you have the Sergeant of the Watch and these two MPs, guns drawn, sweeping the car yard, making their way up to the building. They clear the yard, nothing. They come up into the building. They search this building from top to bottom. Absolutely nothing. The first officer, by the time they had searched half of that building, he is starting to lose his mind, freaking out so badly that the Sergeant of the Watch makes him holster his firearm and just hold a flashlight. Then, as they're wrapping it up, they come out of the building. All three of them are now facing 3 squad cars. Now, mind you, you have the first squad car at the gate. The buddy squad car is behind it, facing the gate. The Sergeant of the Watch had left his on the road about 10 feet behind my buddy's squad car. So you have 3 in a line. In front of the gate of the first patrol car were 5 people that the headlights were shooting through. They saw them for a second, and then they were gone.
Whoa.
At that point, all 3 of them made their way to the gate, secured the area, and left.
Everybody there saw those 5 silhouettes against the headlights.
According to my friend, it was himself, the primary responding officer, and the Sergeant of the Watch.
And they're all just like, bye. Forget
Bye.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, called in as false alarm, no contact, everything secure, no damages, building secure, gate secure, code 4.
And that's probably the best thing you can do in that situation. I didn't see nothing.
100%.
Goodbye.
Because here's the deal. if you're a professional on duty and you call in, hi, that break-in you called in, me, the sergeant of the watch, and another officer are out here alone in the middle of the woods, and we just saw 5 ghosts standing near our patrol cars, and they're standing here looking at us, and now they've disappeared. We're all good. You're going to get put under psychological evaluation before you even come back to the squad house. And good luck getting your duty belt and your firearm back.
That just makes me think. I got to interview an officer at some point. I bet there are so many crazy stories like that where it's like, I didn't ask any more questions. I just went on my merry way.
Guarantee. The number of cops, I believe, have seen their fair share of the quote-unquote unexplainable, I would say, are on par with the number of pilots who have seen unexplained aerial phenomena and have yet to come forward. Because it's the same thing. Any pilot who comes forward and says, I saw a UFO, is going to get grounded and fly a desk.
Join the chair force, yeah.
Oh, 100%. And it is not because there's a negative stigma about UFOs and it's for nut jobs. If I'm thinking administratively, I potentially have a pilot who saw something that they do not know what it is. They cannot identify it. They may be emotionally disturbed, and they might be at the point where they are questioning themselves. I cannot have a pilot who may be emotional and is questioning themselves fly a plane with 800 souls on board. If you're approaching it with that mindset, I understand. However, if you then reevaluate that pilot and find they are sound and fit to fly, you take them off the desk. So he never went back to that car yard by himself. And to my knowledge, they would not go into the gate to look. It was always spotlighted, or you drove past any spotlight. The door they were at is maybe 40 feet away from the gate. It's open gravel. There's no way you would mistake anything for a faded see-through silhouette. The fact that not a single round was fired at these things into the squad car.
That is a small blessing, yeah.
Who's going to shoot these things? Because thank heavens, the duty sergeant told Officer 1 to holster his weapon, because the way he was apparently acting, if his firearm was out, you know he was going to mag dump one of these things. Because clearly by the time they were getting through that building, he was on edge. Worse than that, what if it had been some kids that had broken in there and were drinking and not supposed to be there? They round the corner, he freaks out and he shoots a kid.
Lives are ruined immediately, yeah.
Like, exactly. So, I mean, the sergeant of the watch, he made the absolute right call. Holster your damn weapon. Just keep your flashlight out. I think that was the smartest call you could have made.
Oh, it is very good snap decision making.
Oh, yeah. Me, I would have kept my firearm holstered the whole time. I wouldn't have even come out with the gun. I was like, no, I'm going to come out with a baseball bat.
That would have been a crazier story, though, if someone had fired and then nothing happened. It just cracks the windshield on one of the cars or something.
Yeah, that would have been. And the way that story really ends is he's up in front of the provost marshal's office giving a full detailed report as to why he's got 8 bullet holes in his windshield of his cruiser.
This was a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, it was fantastic. Well, I very much appreciate it. All right, have a good night. Stay sorry.
Take it easy, man. And folks, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Now those were some frightfully fun stories. Howdy everybody, it's me, your host Danny, and I wanted to let you in on something special. You might have noticed that when I introduce the show, I say we are the Hometown Horrors Podcast. That's because there will always be at least 3 people in each episode. Me, the person who wants to hear a good story, the guest, the teller of a good story, and you, the listener, that takes that story and carries it with you out into the world. And we make up a special kind of trinity. We are the Hometown Horrors Podcast. And if you ever want to graduate from listener to guest, reach out to us via our handle on Instagram, hometown_horrors_podcast. Our email is thehometownhorrorspodcast, no spaces, @gmail.com, or via text or phone call at 571-358-8880, which FYI is not my personal number, but give it a ring. I'll get back to you, because if there's anything I've learned from doing the podcast is that everybody has a story, and that story deserves to be heard. On your number one source for the most spine-tingling, gut-wrenching, insomnia-inducing stories around, the Hometown Horrors Podcast.